To set up long division, we have to have a few important setup rules. Now, these setup rules didn't come across in numbers because when you were dividing, if you had to divide 3,058 divided by 7, you could set it up no problem, right? Someone would look at you funny if you decided to say, oh, I'll just write my 5 first, then my 8. That's the same thing, right? Well, no, in numbers, those are different. But when we set up a polynomial, 2x cubed plus 5 minus 2x plus 3x squared is the same as 2x cubed plus 3x squared minus 2x plus 5, right? That's the same thing. But for our setup, it's going to make a difference. So when we set up things, we are going to set things up in just like this. This is sort of the standard form for writing any polynomial. And that standard form is in descending order of degree or power. So we're looking at our powers of x. Notice I wrote the x cubed first, then the x squared, then the 2x, then the 5. Right? So that's number 1 in our setup. The second thing in the setup also never comes across in dividing by numbers. So if I had 3,058 divided by 7, and you were setting it up, you would look at a person funny if they did this, and they said, well, 0 is worth nothing, so why write it? Well, that makes a different number. But in polynomials, sometimes there's going to be a power missing. This one doesn't have that. But we could have one that has an x cubed, but no x squareds, and then an x. So it doesn't happen yet. It will happen in one of our examples coming up. But since we're writing our setup right now, the second thing for our setup is we're going to include 0 when a power or degree is missing. So it's a little bit more involved than numbers, because numbers, they give you the number, you just write down the number. But now you have to be aware of the order matters, and if something's missing, we're going to include a 0. So when we set this one up for long division, we're going to have 2x cubed plus 3x squared minus 2x plus 5. That is in descending order. X minus 1 out in front. And then we're going to go through that same process as we did before. We're going to underdot line our first term and ask ourselves, is there something I could multiply x minus 1 by to get 2x cubed? And what would that be? It would be 2x squared. Since it's 2x squared, I'd write it over my x squared column, multiply it out. I'll get, sure enough, 2x cubed. 2x squared times the minus 1 is minus 2x squared, and then we subtract. And you might start to notice that you do the same. If you can do this once, now we just repeat the process until we're done. So if you understand it once, then you go through the underdot line, what do I multiply by, subtract, and keep going until you're done. So now I'm going to subtract 3 minus a negative 2. And trust me, this is where you're going to make your mistakes, is in the subtracting. You're going to make little mental math mistakes, and then you're going to be like, oh, my answer's wrong. What did I do? And then I'll find where your little mental math mistake is, especially because, like subtracting negatives, you got to remember that you're distributing. So now we can underdot line the 5x squared. What would I have to multiply x minus 1 by to get 5x squared? Right, a 5x. I'd write that above my x's. 5x times x, sure enough, 5x squared. 5x times the minus 1, minus 5x. subtract. 5x squared minus 5x squared, perfect, it's 0. Negative 2x minus a negative 5 plus 3x. Bring down the 5. Under dot line, your 3x. What would I have to multiply 3x, x minus 1 by to get a 3x? Plus 3. 3 times x, 3x. Perfect. 3 times the minus 1, minus 3. Subtract. This is the, we've subtracted all the way through. I've talked about distributing the negative. For whatever reason, when you get so close to finishing is where the mental math errors happen the most. You're like, woohoo, I'm done. 5 minus 3 and put a remainder of 2. But what is the remainder? 5 minus a negative 3. The remainder is 8. But somehow that remainder one, you're so close to finishing, you get so excited about finishing, that's where you're going to make your mental math mistake. Take your time, do your mental math correctly, and there we get our answer. 2x squared plus 5x plus 3, remainder 8. Okay, questions for practice, 3 ACD and 5.